What's really good, guys? It's your boy Hatter from FFL, the commissioner, and we are here with a special guest, Mr. Andrew from Fantasy Pros, fantasy football analyst. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, living the dream. Today I've been tasked with writing up some DST write-ups. So looking at the
Oh man,
DSTs. So lucky me. So I'm taking a break from that. Happy to join you here today.
for sure. I mean, when you're doing those write-ups, man, I'm sure that be kind of be taking up your sleeping time for sure.
Yeah, no, especially when it comes to writing up defenses, because it's kind of like the last thing you want to talk about when it comes to fantasy. But in most leagues, you still have to draft a DST. And right now, my sleeper DST is the Saints.
Oh,
A little sneak peek. The Saints have a really easy schedule next year, so they're playing a
yep,
bunch of bad teams. And what do we see when defenses play bad teams? They get turnovers, they get sacks, they get interceptions. So if you're scrambling at in your draft, you're like, oh, I don't know what defense to draft.
right.
The Saints should be available for you.
I mean, yeah, I think the Saints definitely up there. Obviously they got that secondary kind of, better than last year. But I also think this year what could be a sleeper is my Commanders, man. I mean, their defense might be something this year. Everything might come in place in the front end. The secondary, adding Forbes in there and just, obviously, uh, I feel like Dan being out the building, right? It might be something different, man. I think like the vibe's gonna be different. I don't really, the offense might get there soon, but I think it's gonna get there too. With Eric Bieniemy there, I think it's gonna be a big change. But overall, man, I mean, there's a lot of questions going on with this year, man. When it comes to fantasy,
Yeah.
would you think so?
Yeah, no, a lot of stuff. We're seeing receivers get drafted a lot earlier now than running backs have traditionally. So that's something that's definitely interesting. And it should be another fun year for sure. At the end of the day, it's still fantasy football. So it's still fun for me.
I mean, with fantasy. I mean, how long you think you've been playing fantasy for? Almost.
I've been playing fantasy since I think 2007.
Okay.
So what is that? 15 years. So
15
it's
plus, yeah.
yeah. So again, not haven't been in the analyst chair for that long. It's only been about 5 years since I've been an
Right,
analyst full
right,
time.
right,
But besides that, I've always played in fantasy,
right,
and now actually where I live, they've legalized sports betting, so that's something I'm getting into too on the fantasy side. So, but the
right,
fantasy, there's a lot of carryover. There's a lot of
right,
stuff that you can apply in the sports gambling space that you learn from fantasy football. So yeah, it's gonna be another fun year for sure.
right. You already did your draft pick orders yet, or you're not there? You guys not there yet with your league?
Yeah, no, still not there yet. I mean, I'm in a couple different leagues, but we usually don't draft. We're basically just kind of like carving out when we want to draft these teams. Usually it's at the end of August, beginning of September, during that kind of week period where there's no games, like because there's only 3 preseason games now instead of 4. So
Right,
during that kind of like 1 week in between the preseason games ending and then the start of the year, that's usually when we're going to see a lot of drafts kick off.
right. Well, did you? How about the order? Like do you know when you're gonna have what pick you're gonna be on in the
Nope.
draft?
Nope. Don't
Not
know
even
that
that.
either
Okay.
yet. So
So
I don't know.
you guys just kind of do that together almost, or a
Yeah,
day
I think
apart.
so. I
Okay.
think that's in the spirit of the game. I think it's obviously nice to know going in so you can practice exactly where you're picking from.
Right.
But at the same time, I do kind of like the aspect of going in kind of blind, like you don't know where you're going to pick until you get there. So,
Right.
and then there's also another draft I've heard about where it's called like the white knuckles draft,
Right.
where
Right.
basically you just go into a room, no computer, no nothing, and you just
Right.
shout out names.
Hmm.
Like you just it's all from memory, and someone just writes down the names as guys get drafted. So
Wow.
like that's like super hardcore.
That's some extreme stuff right there,
Yeah, well,
man.
it's
I
like
mean,
like how well do you know the players? It's like all right,
right.
round one you probably feel pretty confident, but then like you get
Right.
round 7, 8,
Right.
9, and then you realize somebody shouts out a name. You're like, oh my god, I totally forgot about that guy.
Right,
But
right.
but
Hey man, that's actually I didn't really think about that, and I actually never thought about doing a draft order right on the draft day. I mean, coming like you're saying, coming in blind because I usually do it with my boys. At least a month earlier, so you can kind of do your mock draft, try to see what's going on. But obviously, even with the mock drafts, everyone's different. Whoever is mocking.
yeah.
So that's I never thought about that. But man, this year, man, I mean, who do you think it's gonna be up there, man? Who do you think is gonna be at least top five wide receiver?
So for me, I feel pretty confident about the top 3 guys. So Jefferson, Chase, Cooper Cup. those are guys I feel pretty confident about. I think that maybe we could see a splash. Tyreek Hill's obviously in that conversation.
Right.
I think that, let's see. I mean, AJ Brown is probably my other guy that I'd probably see in the top 5, but
Right.
Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I really like a lot. He's been super consistent ever since his rookie year. And, Garrett Wilson, if that connection gels with Aaron Rodgers, you could see Garrett Wilson being a top 5 wide receiver.
Right.
But it's just a matter of, how well or how quickly can he hit the ground running with a new quarterback. I mean, it
Right.
has to be an upgrade from last year, but at the same time, we've seen Aaron Rodgers go through growing pains with younger wide receivers. So Garrett Wilson, I'm willing to take the shot on, but I understand that there's risk involved. New
Right.
quarterback, new home. Aaron Rodgers is not exactly the guy. If things don't start out great for the Jets, is Aaron Rodgers going to tap out and be like, whatever this is, I'm going to just do, I'm going to go back to my darkness.
Right.
So that's always something that you have to kind of be concerned about with the Jets, with so many moving pieces, all a bunch of new players, new quarterback. But,
Right.
Garrett Wilson is a very talented player. So I usually want to bet on the talent versus the situation.
Right. I mean, yeah, Garrett Wilson has the best release in the game. I mean, as when it comes
Yeah.
to wide receiver, at least from what I think. So, definitely, the Jets, it's gonna be, maybe the Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson connection. The double chunk up might be pretty good, man, if you have him on a team, on your fantasy team. But yeah, I feel like Justin Jefferson obviously will be up there. I feel like Cooper Cup is definitely going to have that year. Hopefully, Stafford stays healthy. But and I think maybe you know Hill might be up there too. I mean, he has the most air yards. I feel like so he definitely might be one of the dudes up there. But as far as running backs, man. This year, I feel like what's going on. The whole contract stuff about running backs. All them being angry and stuff like that. What do you think? You think, man? I mean, of course they're gonna try their best, but you think they all bummed out? I'm sure they all bummed out. But you think it's gonna affect any playing, ability?
I mean, not from the guys that are going to play. I mean, guys are going to play. I mean, there are plenty of running backs that have good contracts still.
Yeah.
So Nick
Right.
Chubb has a good contract. Derrick Henry
Right.
has a good contract. So those guys are getting paid, and it's not their problem.
Right.
Honestly, it's Saquon Barkley. Like those guys are on rookie contracts.
Right.
Like these other guys had to work their way off rookie contracts too. So I get
Right.
that it's not fair. I understand it, especially as a first round pick. You are not treated the same. Jonathan
Right.
Taylor's going to probably play his contract out because he doesn't have the option to be franchise tagged because he doesn't have that extra thing on his deal. So I
Right.
think for me, I don't think you're going to see a downplay. Running backs are going to play football, and if
Right.
you're out there, you're not thinking about your contract. You're just
Right.
trying to play the best that you can. So, and again, guys play for their teammates. They're not playing for the GM, or
Right.
they play for their teammates. They play for the fans. Like
Right.
so, I think that they're going to be fine. But when it comes to the guys that are going to potentially hold out,
Right.
I would bet that Saquon Barkley comes in back and plays, whether they get a long term deal or not, whether he signs the franchise tag. I think he's going to play. Josh
Right.
Jacobs, on the other hand, though, I would not be surprised if he does not play.
Hmm.
Josh Jacobs seems like the guy that would willing to be fall on the knife for the running back position. He's kind of talked about that before, and he's been kind of a
Right.
polarizing guy in fantasy where
Oh
he
yeah. I
doesn't
mean,
really
last year.
he doesn't really care what people think.
Right.
He's done a lot of things like kind of almost like against fantasy football, where he's
Right.
told people to start him and he wasn't going to play and all this stuff and yada yada yada. So
Right.
if there's a guy that holds out into the season, I would bet that it would be Josh Jacobs because I mean also the Raiders are a more dysfunctional franchise than the Giants are. The Giants kind of seem like they're going in the right direction, whereas the Raiders seem like they're going in like the bottoming out. So it would not
Right.
surprise me if Jacobs is like I'm out. Like I don't even care. Like I'll just play for a different team, whatever. So that's the way I kind of see it.
Do you think would you draft Jacobs?
No,
Obviously not.
not
Yeah.
touching
Okay.
him.
Yeah. Not touching him, huh? Oh yeah. I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, you saw what Eckler posted the other day? He's kind of mad about the whole contract stuff too. And he's passing on him. It's crazy, but him being upset about the whole situation as well. could be a little alarming for people who are, in their pick 4 or pick 3 even. So, um, yeah, I mean, hopefully, obviously, you got to play, but there's always these risks going on. But I feel like this year, I feel like Eckler is definitely going to be up there. And I mean, what do you think about Hopkins' situation? Going, at Tennessee, um, you know, being their main guy. You think he's going to be performing?
I mean, I think that he's kind of like a wide receiver too. I mean, he benefited a lot last year from a lot of passing volume. Like they threw the ball
Mhm.
a ton in Arizona. They're just not going to do that in Tennessee. And he is
Right,
older, so he's going to be 31. So
right,
I think he's a wide receiver too. I would take him in like that 20 to 24 range, but I don't think you should expect him to be a top 10 wide receiver.
right.
Um, so yeah.
I mean, with that said, I mean, Derrick Henry, you think he's going to have the same type of game that he always has every year, or do you think he might bump it up a little bit more?
I mean, it helps that they have Hopkins because it just makes the offense better in general. So it gives him
Right,
more opportunities for touchdowns. So
right.
yeah, I mean, betting against Derrick Henry has not worked out for anyone the last couple of years just because the guy's an
Tell me.
absolute freak.
Right,
So he's in a contract year. So the
right,
Titans have all the reason in the world to be like, all right, dude, here's 400 carries and then
right,
bye.
right.
So I think that he's gonna just do exactly what he always does.
And let's say you're going to be picked number 1 in your draft. All right. Hopefully, the guys in your draft, don't watch this video. But who you think you're gonna pick?
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase. Huh. All right, Mr. Erickson. Let's slow down. Why Chase
Well,
over Mr. JJ?
Well, who was better at LSU? Jamar Chase.
Oh, I
Jamar Chase was
see.
better at LSU, and Jamar Chase has a better quarterback than Justin Jefferson
Hmm,
does. And if you look
hmm.
at last year, Jamar Chase averaged more red zone targets per game than anyone else in the NFL. He averaged more expected fantasy points per game than any other wide receiver in the NFL. So better than Jefferson. He had a higher target share than Justin Jefferson did. So
Hmm.
what I'm looking at, okay, who's a wide receiver that could potentially score 20 touchdowns? It's
Right.
Jamar Chase because
Hmm.
Kirk Cousins ain't throwing for 50 touchdowns, but Joe
Right.
Burrow, we could see him throw for 50 touchdowns. And if
Right.
that happens, Jamar Chase is probably going to catch 20 of them. So
Right. I mean,
that's the way I see it with Chase over Jefferson,
and
just
you're
because of
not
the
lying.
touchdowns.
You are definitely online on that. I mean, especially with Addison coming in, the player that he is in college and being an addition to the Vikings wide receiver group. I mean, JJ's thing could be a little different this year, man. I mean, you're definitely, they might be double teaming him more, and obviously Addison in the back, and then they got Mister KJ Osborne too, who's not bad. So I definitely do agree on that. I mean, it could be, it's going to be a tough decision for people who are in that first, the first pick, and even the second pick. But I mean, as far as it comes to running backs, who do you think should be the first running back out the board?
Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This guy, I mean, McCaffrey's a dude, man, but I feel like this guy is, it's always scared drafting him, you know, with the injuries, stuff like that. I mean,
I mean, he did get
speaking,
hurt last year. He was
it's-
healthy last year.
right, but like 2 years ago, right? I drafted him first pick, first round. Man, messed my whole damn team up, bro. I mean,
Well, I mean that's what happened to Jonathan Taylor this past year. People
well,
drafted Jonathan Taylor, and then he
JT
got
should
hurt.
not even be drafted, man. But I mean,
Oh god.
McCaffrey, bro, like, dude, like this boy bro, Eric, bro, you lucky, man. I won that season. I still won the Super Bowl that season. And guess who I started in the Super Bowl matchup? I had Jared Patterson and Boston Scott
Whew.
as my starting running backs, bro,
Damn.
because I didn't have no other. I did literally. I did the whole hero thing, man. I was like, you know what? I'm drafting that hero running. I'm drafting that hero running back, Mr. McCaffrey, and then I'm gonna draft all wide receivers. That's what I did. That was my, you know, people gonna watch this from my league. They're like, okay, now I know what he tried. Now I know why he had all those wide receivers lined up. Yeah, that's what I did. and obviously, it didn't work out. But obviously, you and me, man, cut from the same cloth, man. We see the future. You know what I mean? When I saw, my boys, Commanders playing the Eagles, I was like, oh Lord, it's gonna be bad. And obviously Scott was the starting running back just for that game, and so was Jared Patterson. So they each got me at least 20 points. So that's 40 points. But who in the world would start those people in the chip? So I don't know, man. McCaffrey, I think he will be the first person out as a running back, but I don't know, man. It's just like, if he gets hurt, man, it's you snooze, you lose type thing,
Yeah, but I
But
mean, you can say that about a lot of running backs. A lot of running backs get hurt. So
right, right. But I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like for me, a first running back off the board, right? I think it should be. I think it should be Nick Chubb. Man.
yeah, I mean, I like Nick Chubb a lot this year too. I think that
I
he's a
mean,
really good. I think
this boy
he's really
is
safe. Yeah.
it's a safe pick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, boy, you probably need to hit him with at least 2-3 tons of I think um Nick Chubb is gonna be up there. I feel like you know Derrick Henry obviously every year. But what do you think the explanation point this year is gonna be? What breakout player or a low key player do you think that people should have their Raiders on?
I like Cam Akers a lot at running back for the
Hmm,
Rams. Who he was really bad at the beginning of last year
right,
because he kind of was in the doghouse, but you saw the team really turned to him when they needed offense. Like
right,
everybody was hurt, the line was horrible, and Sean McVay was like, "All right, give the ball to Cam Akers," and he was a top 5 running back over the last 6 weeks of the year. He led the
right,
NFL in rushing yards over that time span. And you look at who else is in that backfield. There's a bunch of day 3 picks and Sony Michelle. Like,
hmm,
there's not a lot of guys that are competing for touches with Cam Akers.
right,
So again, he's in like a contract year too as well. I think he's gonna be a restricted free agent at the end of the year. So again, these young running backs, this is when you want to ride him. He's another year
right,
removed from his Achilles injury. Sean McVay, I think he's finally in good graces with Sean McVay. They've had a very
right,
bumpy relationship,
right,
but I think now is the time that they are showing confidence in Akers, and he goes outside the top 20 running backs. You can get him in
right,
like round 6. Like he could be your potential hero RB if you just draft a bunch of receivers, a tight end, a quarterback. In the beginning of your draft, round 6 comes along, you take Cam Akers, he can be an RB1. I think he's
hmm,
going to get the volume to do so. And I mean, outside Cooper Cup, like what other Rams weapons are there? Like Van
right,
Jefferson, like
right,
Tutu Atwell, like
right,
Tyler Higbee, just like a bunch of okay, whatever. Like Cam Akers could be the second best offensive piece on that team behind
right.
Cooper Cup.
Right, I do agree with that as well. I mean, I did draft Cam last year in the draft.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
A
Right
disaster.
in week 1, we saw it
It,
all on TV. He wasn't even
um,
starting.
I was like, come on, bro. I'm like,
Yeah, it was
dude,
bad.
but it was bad. But speaking of that, who do you think that one wide receiver? No, and it can be a no name wide receiver. You think is going to be up there this year, man?
A wide receiver that I really like. I
No
do
one knows
like
about him. He's a sleeper. No one knows about him.
nobody knows about him. So we're going real deep here
I'm
at
going
wide
real deep here.
receiver.
I'm going like 12-man league, 12, 14-man league. A dude that could be that late round pick, just to pick him, just to tell people, hey man,
All
this
right.
dude right here is gonna lit it up.
All right, all right, all right. Here we go. So I was big on, famously big on Cortland Sutton last year. Did not work
Right.
out. So, but that doesn't mean I'm out on Denver's offense this year.
Okay.
And I think Russ can bounce back a little bit.
Right.
And the guy that I'm looking at, so I like Jerry Judy a lot, but he's more
Okay.
expensive and people know
Right.
about him. So the guy that
Right.
I'm now going towards is Marvin Mims, rookie
Hmm.
wide receiver from
Definitely.
Oklahoma. The Broncos traded up. Sean Payton, his first pick as part of the Denver Broncos regime, traded up to
Right.
get into the second round to draft Marvin Mims,
Yes,
when
sir.
the team had basically no need to draft wide receivers. Like they had a bunch
Right.
of other needs, and it's like,
That's
oh,
definitely a signal.
they took a wide receiver anyway. So it's like, okay, so why would they do that? Because they think that this guy can be the next Tyler Lockett for Russell Wilson. Super
Right.
explosive down the field, can create yards after the catch, super productive at Oklahoma, great college profile.
Right.
And I think that you shouldn't overstate the fact that he traded. You know who other players Sean Payton trade up for in day 2 of the draft? In day 1, he traded up to get Brandon Cooks. How
Right.
Brandon Cooks is still putting up 1,000 yards. It doesn't even matter what team he's on. He's still
Right.
putting up 1,000 yards every single team that he goes to. And
Right.
the other guy that Sean Payton traded up for in day 2 of the draft, running back 41, Alvin Kamara. Oh yeah, you guys know him, right? Yeah,
Right.
these are some
Hmm.
players that Sean Payton has traded up for in the past, and he
Hmm.
traded up to get Marvin Mims. So I get that he's not super because it's like, oh, well, there's a bunch of other guys in front of him on the depth chart. But I mean, we were talking about Sutton, Judy being like trade targets for other
Right.
teams in the NFL. So it's like,
Right.
how like how secure are their jobs on this team? I think that this particular depth chart is actually wide open. And
Right.
I think that any of these guys could really break out. And right now, Marvin Mims is the one that people are sleeping on the most,
Right.
when I think that he actually has one of the best skill sets to fit Russell Wilson when he's playing at his best. So for me, I mean, Russell Wilson goes after Tim Patrick.
Right.
So yeah, Marvin Mims, stash him as one of your last picks, and thank me later.
Okay. And I think, and who I think might be a beast player, uh, you know, under the radar would be, I don't know if you might agree with this, Justin Ross, Kansas City, last year was hurt.
I mean,
And
he's
this
been
year,
hurt since 19 years old at this
I'm
point.
telling you, but coming into to the camp healthy, right? And some of these birdies are telling me that, man, he might be ready to go this year, full speed. And I think he had an amazing college tape, man, amazing.
Mhm.
Big dude. And obviously, being with Pat, I mean, he's definitely gonna eat. I mean, I definitely think he's better than Sky Moore, and I definitely think he might be there, on a sideline. I mean, in a lineup with Tony. I think those guys might be the dudes. I think he's definitely gonna, uh, once the season starts, I think he might even, go over Scantling. So it's going to be some things to see, definitely.
Yeah.
But that's who I think might be under the radar. But I mean, this year a lot of stuff going on. I mean, even on a mock draft right now, they got what's his name, uh, Robinson. Already like top six, like predicted, saying that he's going to get this many points. I mean, he hasn't shown a thing yet in the NFL, but I guess it's all the fate that's on him, that hey man, this guy's going to be a beast player, or he's going to be right off the boat, he's going to be getting touchdowns and yards. So I mean, I guess that's what it is. I mean, what do you think, man, with Bijan Robinson? Man, do you think he's going to make some noise this year?
Oh, 100%. I think that a good thought exercise to kind of think about is trying to project, okay, we're talking about the first round this year. Think
Right.
about, okay, in 2024, who's going to be drafted in the first round? And there's no doubt in my mind that Bijan Robinson's going to be there. Like
Right.
he's going to be the number 1 overall pick next year.
Right.
So how does that happen? Then he has to have a good year this year. So yes, maybe week 1 it doesn't hit right away,
Right.
but I mean, week 10, like in the league championships, like he's going to be the guy you want.
Right.
So even if it doesn't look like it on the surface, like in week 1 that he was worth where you took him, every week I'm going to write about buy Bijan Robinson. Go
Hmm.
trade for him right now. So even
Hmm.
if you don't draft him in round
Right.
1, every week I'm going to tell people,
Right.
on Fantasypros, go trade for Bijan Robinson. Buy low. This is your
Right.
chance. This is your
Right.
only chance. Like you got to get him now.
Right.
So that's the way I see it. Because again, you don't win your championship in week 1. You just
Right.
got to get to the playoffs. It doesn't matter
Right.
if you're the 1 seed, 6 seed, whatever. You just got to get there. Because once
Right.
you're in the playoffs, all deals are off.
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
it's a weekly game, and you just have to make sure you have the right players at the right time. And I think
Right.
Bijan is going to be one of those guys during the playoffs where it's like, man, I'm glad I took him in round one when I did, or I
Right.
traded for him when I did, because or else I wouldn't have had this monster producer get me to
Right.
the championship.
I definitely agree on that. I mean, I definitely will have him circled up because, you know, for me at least, is like, college is college, right? And the NFL is NFL, right? I like to see some proof first, when you get
Mhm.
to so you can get comfortable. But definitely, I mean, he's definitely on the radar. But Andrew, man, I appreciate you coming up on the podcast. Sharing some of your tips to some of the people out there, who play fantasy, and obviously this is a fantasy league. We definitely gonna touch bases with another podcast during the season and see how everything is going. But Andrew Erickson, man, from Fantasy Pros, appreciate you. And guys, thank you for watching the FFL podcast. Stay in tune for more in the future. Appreciate it.